Good morning and welcome to the daily chapter reading of How to Know God, a therapeutical book, Viva Voce practice, and throat chakra healing. It's no coincidence that a wealthy and privileged society is so prone to rampant addictions. Stage 2 is based on pleasure, and when pleasure becomes obsessive, the result is addiction. If a source of pleasure is truly fulfilling, there is a natural cycle that begins with desire and ends in satiation. Addiction never closes the circle. Stage 2 is also power-based, and power is notoriously selfish. When a doting parent finds it almost impossible to let a coddled child break free, the excuse may be, "I love you too much. I don't want you to grow up." Yet the unspoken motive is self-centered. "I crave the pleasure it brings me to have you remain a child." The God of Stage 2 is jealous of his power over us because it pleases him. He is addicted to control. And like human addiction, the implication is that God is not satisfied no matter how much control he exerts. Psychiatrists meet people every day who complain about the emotional turmoil in their lives and yet are blindly addicted to drama. They cannot survive outside the dance of love-hate. They create tension, foster mistrust, and never leave well enough alone. Other addictions are also based on behavior. The need to have something wrong in your life or to create it if it doesn't exist. The obsession over things going wrong. This is the what if addiction. And finally, the compulsion to be perfect at all costs. This last addiction has taken secular form in people who crave the perfect family, perfect home, and perfect career. They do not even see the irony that such perfection is dead. It can be bought only at the price of killing our inborn spontaneity, which by its nature can never be controlled. There is a corresponding spiritual state, however, that aims to please God through a life that has no blemish whatever. In the loyalty oath of Psalm 101, the believer makes promise no one could live up to. "I will set before myself no sordid aim. I will reject all crooked thoughts. I will have no dealing with evil." Such absolutism itself amounts to an addiction, and it is here in Stage 2 that fanaticism is born. The fanatic is caught in a self-contradiction. Whereas an Orthodox believer can feel satisfied if he obeys the law down to the last detail, the fanatic must purify his very thoughts. Complete control over the mind is unachievable, but this doesn't prevent him from imposing ever stricter vigilance on crooked thoughts. Fanatics are also obsessed by other people's purity, opening an endless quest to police human imperfection. This fate lies in wait for those who get stuck in Stage 2. They lose sight of the actual goal of spiritual life, to free humans and allow them to live in innocence and love. This loss cannot be repaired until the devotee stops being so concerned with the law. To do that, he must find an inner life, which will never happen as long as he is policing his own desires. Vigilance kills all spontaneity in the end. When a person begins to see that life is more than trying to be perfect, the bad old desires rear their heads again. Only this time they are seen as natural, not evil, and the road is open for Stage 3. It comes as a source of wonder when turning inward breaks the spell of I, me, mine, and ends its cravings. Stage 3, God of Peace, restful awareness response. No one could accuse the earlier God of stages 1 or 2 of being very interested in peace. Whether unleashing floods or inciting warfare, the God we've seen so far relishes struggle. Yet even such powerful ties as fear and awe begin to fray. You believe that you were created to serve God, an Indian guru once pointed out. But in the end, you may discover that God was created to serve you. The suspicion that this might be true launches stage 3, for until now the balance has all been in God's favor. Obedience to Him has mattered far more than our own needs. The balance begins to shift when we find that we can meet our own needs. It takes no God up there to bring peace and wisdom, because the cerebral cortex already contains a mechanism for both. When a person stops focusing on outer activity, closes his eyes, and relaxes, brain activity automatically alters. The dominance of alpha wave rhythm signals a state of rest that is aware at the same time. The brain is not going to sleep, but it is not thinking either. Instead, there is a new kind of alertness, one that needs no thoughts to fill up the silence. Corresponding changes occur in the body at the same time as blood pressure and heart rate decrease, accompanied by lessened oxygen consumption. These various changes do not sound overly impressive when put in technical terms, but the subjective effect can be dramatic. Peace replaces the mind's chaotic activity, inner turmoil ceases. The Psalms declare, "Commune with your own heart on your bed and be still." And even more explicitly, "Be still and know that I am God." This is the God of stage 3, who can be described as detached, calm, offering consolation, undemanding, conciliatory, silent, meditative. It hardly seems possible that this nonviolent deity emerged from stage 2 and he didn't. Stage 3 transcends the willful, demanding God that once prevailed, just as the new brain transcends the old. Only by discovering that peace lies within does the devotee find a place that divine vengeance and retribution cannot touch. In essence, the mind is turning inward to experience itself. This forms the basis of contemplation and meditation in every tradition. The first solid research on the restful awareness response came with the study of mantra meditation, specifically transcendental meditation in the 1960s and 1970s. Until then, the West had paid a little scientific attention to meditation. It didn't really occur to anyone that if meditation was genuine, some shift in the nervous system must accompany it. Early experiments at the Menninger Foundation had established, however, that some yogis could lower their heart rate and breathing almost to nil. Physiologically, they should have been on the brink of death. Instead, they reported intense inner peace, bliss, and oneness with God. Nor was this phenomenon simply a curiosity from the East. In December 1577, a Spanish monk in the town of Avila was kidnapped in the middle of the night. He was carted off to Toledo to be thrown into a church prison. His captors were not bandits, but his own Carmelite order, against whom he had committed the grave offense of taking the wrong side in a fierce theological dispute. As advisor to a house of Carmelite nuns, he had given them permission to elect their own leader instead of leaving it to the bishop. From our modern perspective, this dispute is all but meaningless. But the monk's superiors were seriously displeased. The monk underwent horrendous torture. His unlit cell was actually a small cupboard not high enough for him to stand erect. He was taken each day to the rectory, where he was given bread, water, and sardine scraps on the floor. Then he was subjected to the circular discipline. While he knelt on the ground, the monks walked around him, scouring his bare back with their leather whips. At first a daily occurrence, this was later restricted to Fridays, but he was tortured with such zeal that his shoulders remained crippled for the rest of his life. The tormented monk has come down to us as a saint, John of the Cross, whose most inspired devotional poetry was written this exact time. While imprisoned in his dark cupboard, St. John cared so little about his ordeal that the only thing he begged for was a pen and paper so he could record his ecstatic inner experience. He felt a particular joy at communing with God in a place the world couldn't touch. On a dark, secret night, starving for love and deep in flame, oh, happy, lucky flight! Unseen I slipped away. My house at last was calm and safe. These opening lines from Dark Night describe the escape of the soul from the body, which delivers the poet from pain to joy. But for this to happen, the brain has to find a way to detach inner experience from outer. In medicine, we run across instances where patients seem remarkably immune to pain. In cases of advanced psychosis, someone who has become catatonic is rigid and unresponsive to stimulation. There is no sign of reacting to pain, just as with patients whose nerves are dead. Chronic schizophrenics have been known to cut themselves with knives or burn their arms with lit cigarettes while showing no awareness of pain. We cannot simply lump a great poet and saint, however, with the mentally ill. In the case of St. John of the Cross, there was a pressing need to separate from his tormentors. He had to find an escape route, and perhaps that was the psychological trigger for his ecstasy. In his poetry, he flees to his secret lover Christ, who caresses and soothes him in his arms. And there my senses vanished in the air. I lay, forgot my being, and on my love I leaned my face. All ceased, I left my being, leaving my cares to fade among the lilies far away. St. John describes with precisely chosen words that transition from the material level. Our bodies are trapped into the quantum level where physical pain and suffering have no bearing. Lying beneath the spiritual beauty of the experience, its basis is the restful awareness response. To put yourself in a comparable situation, imagine that you are a marathon runner. Marathons test the body's extremes of endurance and pain. At a certain point, long-distance runners enter the zone, a place that transcends physical discomfort. The runner no longer feels pain as part of his experience. The God of peace is detached. The runner's mind stops fighting and struggling. The God of peace is calm. The zone makes one feel immune to harm. The God of peace offers consolation. Winning and losing are no longer a driving force. The God of peace is undemanding. There is no need to fight. The zone will take care of everything. The God of peace is conciliatory. The runner's mind quiets down. The God of peace is silent. In the zone, one expands beyond the limits of the body, touching the wholeness and oneness of everything. The God of peace is meditative. I have heard of professional football players who claim that at a certain point in every game, the game takes over, and they feel as if they are going through the motions of a dance. Instead of using every ounce of will to make it downfield to catch a pass, they see themselves running ahead and meeting the ball as if destined. The God of peace isn't found by diving within so much as he rises from within when the time is right. Who am I? A silent witness.